So before you came into Women Reimagined, tell me what was going on for you in life.
So before the universe brought us together, and before I came into the container of Woman Reimagined, I had been kind of newly liberated from a role. So I was part of a reduction in force. I had just taken the summer off to figure out what I wanted to do next in my life. I love my work, but I was coming out of a really kind of bad situation with a manager and reflecting on what that meant for me and what part I played in it, what part I didn't play in it, and just taking things for face value and deciding what I was doing next. So I was kind of work was consuming as it had for a very, very long time, that part of my life. I think I was struggling with the loss of the identity of my title because I had never been without work before. So it really was like, who am I now when I enter rooms without a title, without a role to say, who am I, who is Elissa? And I think you pressed me on that in a couple of the sessions. I was not confident in my body because I had neglected it because I was sitting here in this, Zoom space all day, every day for, 10 plus hours a day. So I wasn't moving my body as much as I should have been or like to. I had good relationship with my family and my partner, but we were just kind of coexisting. So there was no conflict happening on the surface, but it wasn't fun. We had bursts and moments of fun, but most of the time it was coexisting throughout the week, and then we would see bursts of fun on the weekends. So I'd say, those were and then a big financial shift. So going from being a high earner to nothing overnight, and what that means for your ego, what it means for your lifestyle, what it means practically to kind of pay the bills, put food on the table, be the responsible adult for your family. So there was a lot going on in that moment, but it was all precipitated from the exit from my corporate job.
I meet a lot of women that are in that position, and then they say to me, I first want to figure out what's next, and then I'll do the program. What would you say to those women?
I was that woman. So I think, it feels like the thing you should do first. And luckily, the universe brought you to me or me to you or us together at the right time because I had already taken a few months off because I knew that my nervous system needed a reset and because of the situation I was coming from. And I would have been the woman, I was the woman to say, all right, let's get your resume sharpened. Let's get your LinkedIn profile updated because there is a real implication for not having money coming in, right? There are real consequences to that. So I think it's a very logical thing to think about because I need to get this in order first because there's external consequences versus what I believe to be internal. And I tried to say that carefully, what I believe to be just internal, and I'll worry about myself last. Because as a high achieving woman my whole life, it was all what I needed to do for others. And I didn't prioritize myself or what I wanted, and frankly never asked myself what I wanted or what I needed. I just went along with like the little duck with my feet and did all the things and made everyone happy and got the gold stars and got the accolades and got the promotions and got the raises, but neglecting my health or fun or things like that that were baked into the rhythm of my life versus I'll stop here and do this fun thing and then I'll go back to the normal. And I think that's, something you said earlier is we think about things fragmented. We don't think about the whole person. So the woman who says, I need to fix the job search before I can fix myself, I was her when they're all one. And I think that's intellectually, you can agree with that.
Mhm.
But it's until, and I'll use your language, embody it repeatedly, consistently, it's hard to know what that really feels like until you've experienced it.
So you were in a really pressure cooker situation when we first met. And like you said, money was one of the key elements that was of concern. And most women will go, let me first invest in the business coach, in the LinkedIn coach, in the whatever. And then once I've got money coming in, I'll say yes to this. But what made you say yes to this at that time?
You, frankly, because listen, I've been in HR for 20 years plus. Okay. I've coached hundreds, if not thousands of people inside the organization informally or formally through manager training, individual coaching leaders, consulting with them. I've seen a coach or two, right? I've had career coaches, I've had other coaches. When you're exploring being an entrepreneur, you get lots of people who are in some ways predatory in, based on your situation. Oh, you're in a pressure cooker. I can help you solve that. Let me sell you this program. And I think I shared an anecdote with you before that I had conversations with some other coaches who were taking advantage and who were trying to charge me $1,000 for an hour call when clearly that they were not worth that. But they were predatory. So I think when we had our conversation, a bit of it was a leap of faith, right? To say, I want to work with this person because already I'm seeing value in that first conversation and challenging me and kind of calling me to the carpet on the things that I am saying or doing that are self-sabotaging. So it was just different, and I trusted my gut, and I took the leap of faith because there were other quote unquote business programs that I bought, enrolled in, that one of two things. I either didn't stay consistent with it and or questioning why I didn't stay consistent with it because I wasn't finding the value or it wasn't set up for me to be successful. And this program was one that I think, working with you one-on-one and the Woman Reimagined program were just different.
So everybody has hesitations, everybody has those concerns and fears. I'd like to address some of those because I know people who are listening to this will have some of those same concerns and fears, let's say. So what were some of the things that were coming up for you as you were sitting with here's the link now to sign up and commit to this? What were some of those things that were going through your head and how did you address those?
Yeah, I don't know if I looked at it so systematically around like, what's my fear? How am I going to address it? What's my fear? I wasn't as planful as that. But what came up for me is certainly like, should I be spending the money on this program or frankly, myself? Or should I continue to keep this money in the bank because of a rainy day or when we need it for groceries or if a tax bill comes up or all the things that happen in life, right? And it was at a time where my husband and I were both in transition, to be candid. So, that's even more stress because I didn't have a partner who was kind of taking care of things or I was taking care of things. We were both in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we were figuring it out together. And even then, coming together to say, if this, he was extremely supportive of it to say, if this is something you believe that is helpful and that you need, go ahead and do it. Right. And I think part of it is the way that we look at things that way is most people I know probably would have been more hesitant and not kind of trusting themselves and betting on themselves and investing in themselves, right? It's like always the bills. Well, they're always going to be there. If this is important and if I want to see a real change, and that's what I kept pressing myself on, is I can keep doing the same thing I'm doing. It was successful-ish before by all the outward standards of success. I have the experience in resume writing and interviewing and networking and all the things that lead to jobs. So I could have done that. I could have spent my money focused on like, how do I set up my consulting practice? But I knew that this is what I needed at the time because I had lost so much of myself, having done all those things for so many years. So I think it was the financial pressure and just understanding that money comes and goes. There's ways to pay for things that can be flexible. What's the cost of not doing it now? I think the other thing is time and dedication. So thinking about starting and stopping things, ooh, shiny ball, this sounds great. I love this. And I am a lifetime learner and I love certificate programs and I love learning and, going back to school. And so it's, outwardly it might seem like, let me collect all of these certificates to prove that I'm something. And I'm sure that that was earlier in my career. I definitely had that, but I do love learning something and I love learning it in a structured way. But I also can get shiny ball syndrome, which is this looks good, this looks good, this looks good. And so if I'm going to invest this money, am I going to see it through? Or am I going to use it as a crutch until I find something and then go back to doing what I was doing before and abandon the commitment I made to myself?
Yeah.
So I'd say those are probably the two biggest things that came up for me as I was evaluating whether or not to kind of click the pay button.
Let's fast forward a bit. So, in the program, talk to me a little bit about how you experienced the program itself, and also as a VIP member, how you experience the program with the individual attention as well.
Yeah, so I would say I think the power of having both together is really helpful. So I'll talk about the program structure first,
Hmm.
and then I'll talk about the VIP add-on. So I think that even early days, as you were talking to the cohort about the frequency, originally it was set up as 2 times a week, and then it moved to 1 time a week with a pre-work, which you can watch asynchronously, which was really more of the teaching part of everything. Like, what are the concepts we're going to cover? And so I like that early pivot because I think 2 times a week would have been too much to commit to, especially as we're all managing our businesses and our families and all the other things of enriching our lives that we're doing through this program. So I think having the upfront asynchronous piece was good. I think that having a cohort of people who are going through it with you is like, oh, I'm not alone. Or wow, we really all are having the same challenges and we're not talking about it because of shame or shitting on ourselves, or we have things that we're dealing with in our personal lives that are very personal that we wouldn't normally share. I think the other component that helped build that community, and again, things that assignments you were giving us and things like that, is the WhatsApp channel, because it felt more like a personal text message space so that we can share files and share pictures and share music and share wins and share struggles and all the things that were coming up during the program. So I think that was a component definitely to keep. The power, I think, of having the one-on-one is we could really dive deep, because with a room full of people, you're exploring a concept and you're all sharing how you connect to that concept. But purely time, I think the one-on-one really had me go deep, and we work through one-on-one the things I was going through, whether it was my business offering, whether it was how my language that I was choosing to use, whether it was preparing for a proposal, whether it was having more fun with my kids, whether it was returning to the luxury that I so enjoy, and not in the way of silly things like, I'm going to have a spa day and then I'll go back to my regular life, right? But finding the moments of joy and luxury in every day, and the dressing for myself and no one else, enjoying my jewelry or my, home, or the scents and all the things that we enjoy in life. I think that would have been harder to do as deeply as we did in the program. So I think the two together was where the magic happened for me.
I remember us getting on a call and I said to you, oh my God, I have never seen you so light, so radiant, so fully yourself. And I'm wondering, was there a point in the program for you where something just clicked or shifted, and it just went from this?
I don't know if there was a main kaboom moment. But I do think there might be micro moments. And I'm trying not to use HR language of like it's a milestone. But really, like, maybe kind of those small unlocks that were cumulative over time. So I think lighter in that I actually lost weight during our time, because I think I was holding on to so much stress and my cortisol level was high and I was going through health issues also, right? That's something we didn't talk about, but all the stress that I was under in my adrenals and my nervous system and everything that I had gone through in the last 2 years in the work situation were showing up in my blood work. And I think, something else, and I'm going to take a detour here, something else that I think really helped me and was an unlock is so many people seek therapy. And I think therapy is great. And if you're seeking someone, that's amazing. But I had an experience that I think I shared with you with a therapist, and I was like, maybe I'll try this. And I went to a therapist, and I won't repeat all the things here, but what the person told me, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is not what you're supposed to be telling people. And if I had listened to her, and this is a licensed therapist, if I had listened to her advice or her counsel or her guidance, I would have stayed in the muck.
Mm-hmm.
I would have stayed in fear consciousness. I would have stayed in negativity and drama, and I would have been seething, and I would have felt like I was a victim of the situation. And that's absolutely not what I wanted. But had I not been working with you, I may have been susceptible to that. But it was those unlocks that we had early on around the language I'm using and what I'm calling to the universe around that's not the way I want to spend my days. That's not the energy or the frequency I want to operate on. And so it was easy for me to dismiss that. And I think that is very, very troublesome because people who are in that mental space can stay there for far too long because they're not thinking about how to move forward or move out of it. And they're so focused on identifying the patterns that were, and they stay there too long. I think there's value in that, but they stay there too long. So I think for me, that was one unlock that I was like, I think it was in the contrast of the two that I saw that. The second thing that I think was an unlock for me is I tend to attract people in my life across different dimensions who come to me because I'm a good listener and because I'm a giver. And when you're those two things, you can get dumped on a lot. Not in a bad way, not in a way that says, someone's trying to do something malicious, but I carry the weight of everyone else's stuff in addition to my stuff. And so now I can kind of prop up the umbrella and say, all right, I understand, I hear what's happening here, but Elissa, that's not yours. That's not yours. So again, it's like not staying in those spaces because I felt the energy. It's weird. I'm not that woo-woo, but I felt the energy of my own body saying, oh, like I don't want to stay in this space. So I think that was another one. And then I think the module that we did on our bodies, and I won't give away too much, but I think that really helped me appreciate her as she is. And I think in multiple dimensions, I think the contrast of seeing what we're doing to ourselves or how we're experiencing our lives and confronting it, and then saying, and how do we want to live our best life today? Our one precious, beautiful life. How do we want to live it today? And I think it was those moments of contrast, maybe along the path, that were unlocks in different ways. I think language is a big one. I think the ways that you have us embody the practices, because I love to learn, but you have to do something with it, right? Even in corporate training, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I think the embodiment practices are really helpful. And I think all those things, and then having more fun in my life, with my kids and my husband and friends, and choosing to be happy, choosing the small moments of having my coffee outside with the sun on my face instead of inside. It's small, but again, cumulatively has a big impact over time.
What surprised you about this experience?
That probably that you were right so often, because I think I was like, damn it, again. Um, because I have lived so much of my life in my logical brain. So the notion of energy or feminine versus masculine or how experience or embodiment, even those words, I was like, okay, I mean, I'll play along. But because I just took myself too seriously, frankly. And who has time for that? But I think it's out of fear because we're fearing that people are judging us, and if we're not serious enough or we don't present as polished enough. And I spent so much of my life in that space because of my corporate identity, because my personal identity and corporate identity were inextricably linked, because that's where I spent most of my time. And frankly, what I was rewarded and valued for, where I was feeling valued in my life. So, that I was winning and something. So I think that it surprised me that once I could let go of those things and just be, that I took a lot of pressure off of myself. And even now, when people are coming to me with things, I'm like, oh, that doesn't bother me. Or people start to get into like dramatic conversation, I'm like, I don't care about that. Or just excusing myself or not engaging in the conversation, or, choosing to pick my kids up from school and just randomly going for ice cream, or picking up my daughter from school and having a dance party in the car with, girl power tunes. Like, and what she's picking up from me now. So I've noticed a difference in my kids and my husband and our relationships because of what I'm doing for me first. And again, you could tell me that all day long, right? We've heard that so many times. But I think bringing it to life in the program with the embodiment, and again, sounding woo woo, you were right.
Please tell my partner that. And it is about the living legacy for me. That the fact that how we live is our legacy. It's not what we leave behind. What has changed for you throughout this time? And I want you to share some of how you feel about yourself, but also what has actually changed in your life since completing this.
Yeah, I would say I thought about, so I recently wrote an article in my LinkedIn newsletter around like my 1 year from being laid off or liberated, which is language from you, right? You weren't laid off, you were liberated. And it feels that way now, having hindsight of the year. But I think the internal, like, I gained weight and then I lost it, right? Because it was that stress. And so that, to me, the stress level in my nervous system regulation was correlated with that. So I feel physically lighter and healthier and have more energy. B12 shots probably help with that. But getting my health in order alongside this, and prioritizing my health and staying consistent. I think that's a big thing for me. I think the relationships I have with my kids and just having more fun and more time, frankly. We took 3 months off. We went to, different countries. We went and saw family. My husband and I are, closer. We share lots of things. We talk, we sit down and have lunch together, which I never would do when I worked from home for corporate because I was literally on this box and I never would take a lunch break. And I think the confidence of, sounds silly, but like, I am enough. Like, I'm not proving anything to anyone. Take it or leave it. I remember we went on a camping trip and someone took a picture of me, and I don't believe in being wasteful with like things. So we were serving steak and I had it in a tin pan. And I was like, I don't need to transfer it to a plate. I'll just put the other food in the tin pan. And it was huge. And so I'm sitting down at the picnic table with like 30 other people on the camping trip with all of our neighbors. And I had this big tin pan with one steak and a bunch of sides in it. And people thought it was the funniest thing. And they were taking pictures of it. And one of the pictures I have, like, holding the steak and eating it. And she was like, sorry. And she posted it on social media. And I was like, I don't even care because I'm not going to be embarrassed. So you take me as I am, all of me or nothing, right? So I think it's just more, a lot of people can say unapologetically me, but really, like, if you're not for me in all of my craziness and weirdness, then you don't deserve to have the best of me either.
I also happen to know that some sensational things are happening in your business. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I think that that's really important. I think a lot of the times women think that you come and do this program and it's all about, feeling good and your body. But what is the ripple effects in your money, in your business, in your partner's business, all of those things?
Yeah, it was interesting. And again, universal echo and, some words that using your language is, don't judge the way that money comes to you. And I think so many of us do that, where I had a mindset of money has to come in this form for it to be successful, or for me to feel like that's where money needs to come from. And it was almost immediately after we went through the money module, I think, that things started like coming. And I started listening to music around it and everything. And I think it was just, again, a ripple effect where I was getting contracts, I was doing proposals, there was a lot more open activity. My husband, got a new full-time contract. I was being paid in ways that I didn't think I would. Taxes, tax returns. There was just like random things, investment accounts, right? All the things. And I have a different relationship with money now. And I think also I'm not so fixed and focused on a number, because I also realize I don't need as much as I did, right? Because I had a lot of leakage, frankly, because I was just bored or trying to, soothe something or being distracted. And so, what do we really want to spend our money on? And when we spend money, being grateful about how we're spending money because of what it's doing in the economy and what it's doing for other people's lives. And again, a teaching from you, which is what does money provide once it leaves my hand? And I should feel grateful for that. And I should feel grateful for being able to be in a position to do that. So, again, I think just relationship with money is different.
Beautiful. Now, one of the things that's different about this space is that you get to stay. Like, this is not one of those programs where we get people in, you finish the program and off you go on your merry way. Like, you get to stay, and we are creating a sisterhood, a real sisterhood. Who do you think will best play in this space?
I think that the ideal profile of the woman is someone who does feel like, who am I now? Or I'm always doing something for other people, with other people. What have if you start, I think a good way to think about it is the words that you use. So I used to be like, I do everything, or I'm always doing everything. I'm so tired. I don't have energy. I feel like that would be a good prompt for people just to listen for, is even in the early days of the program, some of the things that were in the workbooks of what you say so that you can see yourself in this. I think that would be good prompts to say, am I complaining too much? Do I find myself involved in drama? Do I have other people complaining to me all the time? Am I happy with myself as I am, or am I putting things off for one day? Am I fully happy and aligned in the work that I do? Are my relationships growing with me? If the answer isn't a hell yes to all of those things, this program is the place for you to be, because it's not surface level. And I think when people hear life coaching, right? Because I think people hear career coach, they hear life coaches, all different types of coaches. But I have found that this program is the most comprehensive, because while we focused on identity in the deeper level, it came through in all the pieces, right? In health, in money, in relationship, in vocation or work, right? So it came through all those things, because all those things are part of our life.
Absolutely. And I'm also going to say, this is not a program for the woman who doesn't want to put in any work, who's going, oh, I'm just tired, just feed me, just do the work for me. And it's definitely not passive. And I know that one of the things that we discussed at closer to the end of the program is that this is so deep, it's not advisable to do this in conjunction with a bunch of other programs. So if a woman is sitting at the moment and she goes, oh, okay, well, what do I do now? Do I do Women Reimagined, or do I go work with a business coach, or do I go and sign up for this program? How would you approach that, knowing what you know now, and what is the space that you would create for the program?
Yeah, I think it's a good life lesson for me in general, because I typically bite off more than I can chew at once. Which is and obviously I prioritize this program, but I didn't prioritize other programs. So I have a lot of like sunk opportunity cost and actual cost in other programs, because I didn't immediately see the value or feel that I was making momentum. So I was like, I'll do that later. I'll do that after. And so I would hate, again, I didn't get the value that I paid for from those programs. And I think similarly, there's probably juice left to squeeze out of my experience in this program because I was kind of distracted amongst some other things. So I think giving the time, and this is good for, I think, as the program, is giving people not rigid, but some guidelines around how many hours per week should you really dedicate to this. I think giving people an expectation, because I think it can take small to large number of hours depending on what you want to put into it, but having some guardrails or expectations I think would help people. With the expectation of, this is how much time you're going to have for the pre-work. This is how much time you're going to have for the in-person Zoom meetings virtually. And then at a minimum, because you can always go up, but at a minimum, you should carve out this amount of time for you to do the embodiment work or the assignment work to really make it live, because otherwise you're just learning content. And that's not going to change your life.
What does Elissa now want to say to Elissa from 4 months ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think saying to her, thank God you found this program. You just trust yourself, really lean in, don't judge so much, and just do, and trust the process and make the most of it and carve out the time. Because even that I had the time and did the things, even a simple trick, and again, I used to do this in corporate, or you have talked about this, is time blocking your calendar for you time, right? And that's something I'm continuing to practice, which is, again, just honor yourself in the process.